Piano with Johnny members, welcome to the February Q&A. We're having a little bit of technical issues today. Unfortunately, our video player is not showing the video, and I'm not sure why. So anyway, we changed basically the video. Please let me know if you're seeing this. You should be seeing the video. And if you are not, then we can try something else. But hopefully you're seeing the video. And let me just make sure we're in business. So I see some yays. Yay, it's working. Okay, very good, guys. So sorry for the technical issues, guys. We would have started on time, but that's just part of doing live stuff like this. So anyway, it's great to be here with you all. You guys all missed me. I was actually talking to you for about 5 or 6 minutes, and then I realized that you guys couldn't see my video. So welcome to the February Q&A. It's great to be here with you. We are using YouTube, actually, to do this live stream. So we'll see how this goes. We've never done this before. Let's see. Let me make sure we're in business here. Okay, I think we're doing good, guys. Anyway, it's great to be here with all of you guys. We're starting today's Q&A a little bit late, and so basically we'll go about an hour here. It's 10:30 here in California. And what we're going to do today is basically you can ask me any questions you have about the piano. They could be really specific questions, like if you have a question about a particular song or a course, or they can be very broad questions. It can be how do you structure your practice time, and how do you deal with self-doubt when you're playing the piano. So feel free to ask anything. And basically, we also received a number of pre-submitted questions. And so basically, if you pre-submitted a question, then I will answer your question at the end of today's Q&A. So if you are watching this after the fact, you can scroll ahead. We're going to have all of the questions chapter markers, so you can skip ahead, you can find your question, and make sure that you get your answer. So it's great to be here with all of you guys on this beautiful Wednesday morning. And what I want to do is I want to turn it over to the chat window here and just say what's up to you guys, and then basically feel free to dive right in and ask anything you want about the piano. So real quick, just say hello to all of you guys. We got James in the house, we got Brendan, we got Owen, we got Nana, we got Mark, Ellen, Felicia, Edward, Dina. I think I said hello to Mark. Great to see all of you guys. We got Tom in the house, Kathy Weiss, great to see you, Laurie Roberts, Adam Garrity, Brandon Dixon. I see all of you guys, and it's so great. Zenny, welcome to the live Q&A. Again, guys, this is pretty weird to have technical issues. We don't usually have technical issues, so we'll be sure to get these resolved so this does not happen in the future. Okay, and it looks like, again, the stream is coming in nice and clean, which is fantastic. If you're just tuning in, welcome. If you are a new member here at Piano with Johnny, I also want to welcome you to Piano with Johnny and just say you came to the right place to learn the piano. We've been having a lot of new members join the community. So if this is your first time at the Q&A, let us know. And let us know here in the comments what you're working on in our catalog. And hopefully you're starting to make some friends in the community. And it's just really exciting for me to get to know each and every one of you. We also have a lot of longtime members tuning into this Q&A. We've got members that are still members here at Piano with Johnny that signed up in 2015 when we launched the PWJ membership. So we are going on about 5 years, which is really, really exciting. All right, so I think I said hello to everyone. I see Joe Rizzo. We got Laurie Roberts. So Laurie's going to ask us a question here. Tips on dealing with nerves, please, Johnny. So nerves are something every pianist deals with. And I remember the first time I got on stage to perform and I felt like I was going to throw up because it's so nerve-wracking to have all these people staring at you and you feel like, oh my gosh, what do I look like? And am I going to make a mistake? And they're going to hate my playing and all this stuff. I think the real key to overcoming your nerves is to become no longer aware of yourself. I think the reason we tend to be nervous at the piano is we feel self-conscious. What do I look like to them, and how do people perceive me? And so I think the biggest key is to lose that awareness of the fact that people are watching you, and try to lose awareness of what they think of you. Okay? And so what I've found to be very effective in doing this is to train your mind to ignore the people watching you and to focus on what you're playing. Okay? And so one thing you can do is just tapping your foot to the music. I think sometimes when we play, we get really stiff and we're thinking, okay, and we're not enjoying the music. And so something that's helped me a lot is literally just moving my body to the music. And so this can be very, very helpful. Long pieces of music that have a continuation, almost, I forget the name of them, but basically where the music sort of continues, it's like a rolling sort of effect. This can be very helpful because it's a continuity of the music. You're not breaking the music to have a break in your thoughts. In other words, the music is continuing on and on. So that can be very helpful, is to play these sort of continuous motion pieces. But I really think the biggest thing is feeling the music, focusing on the music, and really making an assertive effort to ignore the audience and whatever they're thinking of you, because you don't really know what they're thinking of you. And furthermore, they want to see you enjoying your performance. When they see you enjoying your performance, then they will also enjoy your performance as well. I did have one more thought on nerves. The other really big thing to overcome your nerves, and I forget who asked this question, is to play a lot in front of people. And this is why we set up the PWJ member community. This is a place that you can share videos every single day with your progress. And I promise you, if you're sharing videos every single day, because hopefully you're practicing every day, even if it's 10 minutes, that's okay. Post a video and show us what you're working on. It can be full of mistakes, but the more you post videos, the more comfortable and the more confident you'll be playing in front of people. It wasn't until I started gigging regularly that I got really comfortable playing in front of people, and it's because I was doing it every single night. I was playing, at one point, 6 nights a week. Playing jazz professionally, and I got very comfortable. So that's probably the best advice I would give all of you guys. If you want to overcome your nerves, is post videos regularly in the PWJ community, or go play somewhere where you're actually playing in front of people. And I promise, in a couple weeks, you will lose all of those nerves, because it just becomes par for the course. It becomes part of your normal day. All right, can you discuss, I think this, let me make sure I got, okay, yeah, I got Lori's question. We got, Gina, what's up, Gina? Gina's son has been really active here in the community. Please tell your son hello from me, Gina. Gabriel, what's up? Julian Clark, what's up? We got Edward. Yeah, live streaming is tough. There's a lot of technical things that can go wrong. We're really grateful we have this set up here. Usually we don't have any issues. So, can you discuss minor blues, please? Is there a standard 12-bar progression? Same scales? Do you have a course on it? So, minor blues is, Dina, there's different ways I could interpret your question. A minor blues could just be referring to the blues scale. Okay, that scale, this is called a C minor blues scale. Now, I referred to it simply as a blues scale, but the technical name is it's a minor blues scale, okay? The C minor blues scale. So you might be referring to that, but I kind of have a feeling you're referring to the chords, them being minor chords. Like, how would you play a minor blues progression? Well, for starters, the standard 12-bar blues can be thought of as a minor or a major progression because you're playing fifths. Usually, if you're playing a blues shuffle, then you're playing these sort of open fifths. So it could be a major chord, it could be a minor chord. There's no minor or major note in the middle to basically tell you. But here's what I would say, is if you're playing a 12-bar blues, it can be perceived as either minor or major. Meaning, on my 1 chord, I can play a C minor 7, right? And then my 4 chord, my F chord, you can play it as a minor 7 chord, or you could play it as a dominant 7 chord, okay? So you have the choice. When you're playing a 12-bar blues and you're going through the standard blues form, you can make your chords minor or dominant. Like on your 5 chord, right? Normally when we're playing a blues, we play this dominant 7th chord. It has a major 3rd in it, but you could go, right? You can use a G minor 7, what I'm doing, I'm playing the 12-bar blues form, but I'm making all my chords minor 7 chords. So that's a way you could do it. But yeah, I wouldn't get too worried about playing minor blues because, again, most blues follows this 12-bar blues form with these chords. There's not a standard 12-bar minor progression. Again, it's usually a major progression, but here's the deal with blues is you have blue notes in your blues scale. So it's going to naturally sound minor because, on a C7, I'm playing an E flat. That's my minor third. Okay, so I wouldn't get too worried about minor blues. It's not really a concept that we talk a lot about because blues is already minor, if that makes sense. Same scales, exactly. Okay, first Q&A. Welcome, Owen. Welcome to your first Q&A. What an exciting time for you to be starting Piano with Johnny, starting your first Q&A here. And again, this is your opportunity to ask me anything you want about the piano. Imagine this being like a private piano lesson. You come here in the studio and you can just ask away. Working on two-hand coordination and some other stuff to keep busy. Very good. Riverside, California. That is where I grew up, Joyce. I grew up off of Van Buren and Limonite, if you know that area. So it is a small world. My question for the song After You've Gone, is there a pattern to the left-hand chords? My question, after you've gone, is there a pattern to the left-hand chords? Something that might help me understand it better, or is it pretty random? No, it's not random, Nana, and in fact, this is a really good question. You want to look for patterns whenever you're playing chord progressions. So After You've Gone is a new chorus we just created here at Piano with Johnny. It's a stride piano chorus. Okay, and that's the harder arrangement. If you're more of a beginner, is a much simpler arrangement. But, Nana, I want to answer your question here. But, look at, what I would first do is look at the general structure of your chords, or kind of the chord function, right? We're starting on an F chord. I know it's an F major 7. And then you go to an F minor 6. Okay, but essentially it's an F chord, right? 2 F chords. And then we go to an A chord, a C chord. And then we go to a A7 chord. And then we go to a D7 chord, and then a G7 chord, right? Oh my goodness, so many chords. How do you remember all these chords? Okay, well here's a really cool trick, and this is how it goes. In music, the most common progression is called a 5-1 chord progression, okay? And here's the idea. A G chord generally leads to a C chord, and a C chord generally leads to a F chord, and an F chord usually it could lead to a B, it might lead to a B flat, but the point is chords move generally by a 5th interval relationship. So D, if I start on D and I go 5 notes down, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, D usually goes to G, G 5 notes down, G usually goes to F, okay? So if you use this principle, you'll actually start to see how chords connect with one another. For example, after my, and by the way, we're in the key of C on this tune, this is a 4 chord. My F chord. Now I'm back to my 1 chord, and then I'm going to do this 5-1 trick going backwards, okay? So I want to get to my C. How do I do that? I'm going to go up a 5th to G, and then how do I get to G? I'm going to go up a 5th to D, and this is a dominant 7 chord, and then I want to get to D, I go up a 5th, and this is an A7 chord, okay? And if you look at the chord progression for After You've Gone, you'll notice this exact thing is I have an A7, I have a D7, and I have a G7, and then I have a C6. So that's kind of the first step, is look at this general movement of chords, and you'll notice a lot of times the chord moves 5-1, okay? The other part of this question is chord function, and this is where it gets, or chord quality. Chord quality. The chord quality is, hey, is this a major 7 chord, or a minor 7, or a dominant 7, or a 6 chord? This is where it gets a little bit trickier to remember, and it's probably beyond the scope to discuss this, but generally, your chords are going to be, if you're thinking in a key, okay, this tune is in the key of C. Generally speaking, your 1 chord is going to be a major chord, so a C6 or a C7. Your 2 chord is going to be a minor 7, could also be a dominant 7. That's very common, but these are kind of the 2 ways that it's almost always played. Your 3 chord is almost always a minor 7, could also be played dominant 7. Your 4 chord is almost always a major chord like this. It could be major 7 or major 6. Your 5 chord is almost always a dominant 7. And so these are actually called diatonic chords. And this is another thing I'd really encourage you to learn. Learn your diatonic 7th chords in the key of C, and this will really help you start to better understand the chord quality. Meaning, on my 6th chord, it's often played A minor 7, because this comes from the C major scale. It's a diatonic 7th chord. Okay, so these are the two things I would think about as chord function. What's that overarching relationship between the chords? It's usually a 5-to-1 relationship. And the second thing is to look at the chord quality. And the chord quality is usually determined from the diatonic chords. I really encourage you to go to our C major diatonic chords course and check out the key of C, because this tune is in the key of C. Great question. Favorite music is country. Any tips on using lead sheet version of classical pieces? You know what's funny, Todd? I actually have a book of classical lead sheets. And it's great. It's really nice to just see the melody and the chords and then be able to sort of embellish it. The challenge I find with this is that so many classical pieces have so many different feels to them. Like it could be very up-tempo, it could be very slow, it could be, for a lot of classical pieces, there's a lot more to the classical piece than just the melody and the chords. Like the listener almost expects a certain arrangement of the classical piece. So if the listener does expect that, then you might not want to use the lead sheet. But I think it's important to know the general feel of the song. Is this a ballad, with a sort of arpeggiated left hand, or is it something like that with more chords? The lead sheet won't tell you this. It'll just tell you the chord and the melody. So I would recommend that if you're going to use lead sheets to play classical pieces, is to listen to the classical pieces beforehand and get a general sense for the groove, okay? And once you have a general sense for the groove, then you can sort of fake it with your lead sheet and use that chord and that melody. That's a great question. I've never had that question before. New member, intermediate, advanced theory, but just realized my hand is beginner, beginner and early intermediate. By the way, this is very common, Zenny, that players will have a head knowledge or a theory knowledge at a high level, but a playing knowledge at a more beginner level, or vice versa. They'll have a really high playing level, like they're really quite a technician of the keyboard, but they don't have as much theory knowledge. So this is normal. Found Johnny to be the best teacher for me. Oh, great. I'm so glad you're enjoying it here, Zenny, and keep up the great work. Make sure you're posting videos to our community page. Do you think taking courses on blues is a good idea before jumping into jazz, or are jazz and blues not related at all? They're very related. Jazz and blues are very related. Here's what I would say to you is, blues is a great starting place to learning jazz, and there's several reasons. I actually made a quick tip on this. 10 reasons you should learn blues before jazz. And Zenny, I would check out this quick tip. You can find it here at Piano with Johnny. Go to our library, quick tips, or you can just search it. 10 reasons you should learn blues before jazz. But I discuss all 10 reasons. There's less chords in the blues. There's less scales to improvise with. It's easier to improvise. You don't have such complicated left hand as you do in jazz. There's a whole host of reasons, but I think blues is a great place to start. I don't think it's an absolute must to start with blues. You certainly could start with jazz. I just have found through many years of teaching that students do better with jazz when they've started with the blues. So for all of you guys wondering if you want to play blues and you want to play jazz, I'd start with blues. Get your standard 12-bar blues form. You want to be able to improvise comfortably over your blues. You want to be able to play a variety of tunes, and this is all stuff you will learn in our blues learning track. So go through that. Once you've got a good grasp of the blues, then I would move into jazz and start learning those more complex chords and learning more complex scales. Very good. Jeanette, we got Dina in the house referring to the blues. Oh, blues in a minor key. Yeah, you know what, Dina? Usually, again, blues is not played in a minor. If you look at most 12-bar blues, the first chord is a dominant 7th chord. It's not a minor 7th chord, okay? So again, blues is not typically played in a minor key. It's usually a dominant chord, which is a major chord. However, you could have a bluesy sounding tune like, Summertime or something. Okay, Okay, that definitely has a minor tonality to it, but the chord progression is entirely different than your standard 12-bar blues. This chord progression goes, C minor 6 to a G7, C minor 6 to a G7, okay? So it's not a traditional blues chord progression, however, it's played with a blues feel or a blues stylization. And by the way, this stylization I'm playing for all of you guys, I call it slow blues. You can learn this in our Bernie's Blues slow blues course, okay? So again, Dean, I wouldn't think of blues as being in a minor key because blues is naturally minor by virtue of the blues scale, because that has that minor third. Joyce, can you show me through a lesson or otherwise the exercises for the Floyd Kramer? Yeah. Slip note that Johnny Hodges shows in your interview with him. Highly recommended interview. You guys got to check out the Johnny Hodges interview. He was my teacher when I was a teenager. He taught me all the ragtime and the stride piano and a lot of blues, a lot of boogie-woogie. He played at Disneyland for 25 years, and we did a 4-hour interview with him right here in the studio, and he shows you a ton of tricks and gives just a wealth of really good advice for learning the piano. So check that out. Anyway, it's the 4th interview around number 34. I watched it several times, but Johnny plays it so fast that I can't get it. Let me see if I can pull this up here. I do have Piano with Johnny loaded here. So let's see if we can get this on the screen here. So just bear with me, guys. You are now looking at our pianowithjohnny.com. So we're going to go to the Johnny Hodges interview. So this is the best way to find content. If you have something really specific you want to find, just type it in. Here's the show. And basically in the show, I think you said, what did you say? 4th interview around number 34. Oh, goodness gracious. Let's see if we can find this really quick. All right, so we're in part 4 down here. Hopefully you guys are seeing this. Part 34. So you know what? I'm in the 4th interview. I don't see a chapter marker for 34. So I'm not sure exactly what you're talking. Country exercise, maybe it's this, number 12. Exercises. Any specific ones?
Well, I've been having fun with the country kind of thing.
Okay.
Lately,
What's
just
that?
for my own satisfaction, You
want to show her?
Well, let's see if I can even play it. Let's see.
Oh, man. Okay, oh, there he goes. Okay, let me just answer this question here because I know we got a lot of questions coming here, but the Floyd Kramer slip notes, that's what he's doing. He's doing a rocking technique. I call this interval rocking. It's basically a C7 chord, and he's just taking like the root and the 5th, the 3rd and the 7th, and he's just rocking these tones, okay? You can do this on any chord, You can do this on an F7, okay? But basically the slip note style is this. Basically, the slip note is you can take different inversions of C. So like a C major like this, the slip note is the D and the G, and you slide up to the E. Okay. You can do basically a second inversion C chord. You're going to play it like that, and you're going to slip note the B up to the C. Okay. You see that? And then the last one is the first inversion C major chord. You get the slip notes in the middle. And this one's a little different. You're going to come up and then back down. Okay, so it's G, A, C. And this sounds amazing. You put a little stride left hand. And you can do this on all your chords, like on a G. You can do it there. Okay, really nice. lot of cool ways you can play slip notes. We don't have a course on Floyd Kramer style piano, but this is something we do plan to make in the future. And actually, Johnny Hodges would be a great teacher to teach this. So we actually may or may not bring him in the studio to teach a course on this topic. Would be a ton of fun. So guys, stay tuned for that. It's a great request. We've actually had that request made a number of times. An example of minor blues in a song, The Thrill Is Gone. It's a minor blues, different progression from the standard. Yeah, The Thrill Is Gone. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just pull this up on, I'm going to pull it up on YouTube, Dina. I know this song, I've heard it, but I want to make sure that, I'm playing this. I want to answer your question, okay? So this is B.B. King. Okay, so here's what's going on, Dina. Yeah, it is minor in the sense that the chords are minor. I'm going to put this in C because I think it's a little bit easier for you to see this. First chord. Okay, this has got a straight eighth feel, so it's not your traditional swung blues feel. But yeah, this is, I would say, a fairly common chord progression for a blues. It goes to your 4 chord, okay? And actually, when I hear him play this, I'm hearing a major sound on your 4 chord. So it's an F dominant 7. Then he goes back to a 1 chord. He goes actually interestingly to a 6 chord, a flat 6. Okay, like that, like an A flat dominant 7. And then he goes to a G dominant 7, okay? And he plays this chord kind of cool. So I wouldn't say this is a super common way to play a blues, but you will hear this in a variety of tunes. I would not call this like the minor blues chord progression, but for your scale, yeah, you would use the C blues scale, you know. That makes sense. It's the same scale. So definitely we could make a course that discusses this tune. I would recommend putting a course request. If you go to our shows page and you go down to our student engagement portal, you can actually make workshop requests. So Dina, I would recommend that you do that because all of those end up getting archived. Great question. Okay, let's move right along here and keep going. In your blues improv instruction, I notice you break up your left hand slightly. This is Russ. I notice you break up your left hand slightly sometimes. For instance, you seem to hit the C slightly earlier or later with your index finger when playing the 2-finger F chord. You seem to hit the C slightly earlier. Okay, I think what you're talking about. Is that what you're talking about? This is what I call a more advanced blues shuffle. This is my favorite way to play a blues shuffle. But I think this is what you're talking about, is when you play the chord, and most guys will go like 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and my way I like better is 1 and 2 and, so it's a single note C, and then I go 3 and 4 and. It's a single note, and it sets up the next chord in a really nice way. It creates a better land for the next chord, okay? So I think this is what you were talking about. The exercise I would practice is do your shuffle. I would do on C, 1 and 2. That's all thumb, and is your index, 3 and 4 and. Does that make sense? Okay, now I think there's another aspect to this what I call this a groove formula. When you go to your F chord, you want to anticipate your F chord. Meaning, when I'm going C to F, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. See what I did? I'm setting up my F7 chord, so the listener is ready to hear that. So that's the other aspect of this equation. Yeah, it's exactly what you're talking about. You're talking about using my index finger. Okay, so a really good course I would recommend for you, Russ, is the 10 Lesson Blues Challenge. We spend actually quite a bit of time in our intermediate advanced. I think it's lesson 2, where we talk about blues shuffles, and I believe this is one of the shuffles that I teach. Another really good course where I teach even more blues shuffles is our Rockin' Blues Bass Lines course. I would check out both of those courses, and you will learn more of the techniques that I use when I'm playing a blues. All right, guys, wonderful questions today. Really appreciate it. Thanks, Owen. Cycle of fifths. Can you explain your thought process on playing the minor 2-5-1 at the end of the progression? More specifically, using rootless voicings and soloing. For example, E minor 7. Okay. So what you're talking about is, if I recall this correctly, the cycle of fifths for this tune starts on a 2 chord in the key of G. Okay, A minor 7, D dominant 7, this is the 5 chord, and then the 1 chord, G major 7, C major 7, right? These are all diatonic chords in the key of G major. They're diatonic 7th chords specifically, okay? So if you don't know these, you really need to know your diatonic 7th chords in the key of G to understand why this is a cycle of fifths in the key of G. Because we start on the A minor, the 2 chord in the key of G, and then we go down a fifth to D, that's the 5 chord in the key of G, and then we go down a fifth to G, that's the 1 chord in the key of G, and then we go down a fifth to C, that's the 4 chord in the key of G. But why do we use this F sharp minor 7 and then B7, E minor 7, okay? Well, F sharp actually is the next naturally occurring fifth in the key of G, meaning if I continued my cycle fifths using the key of G, meaning I'm using notes from the G major scale, well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, okay? If you go down a fifth and you stay in the diatonic system, then your chord is actually an F sharp minor 7 flat 5, or F sharp half diminished, okay? So that's why we use this chord. The final chord we're going to use is the B7, and again, the B7 is down a fifth, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, from F sharp. So again, we're still doing our cycle of fifths here, but the reason we make it a dominant 7th chord is because we want to lead this chord back to an E minor 7, and the strongest leading chord, I want you guys all to listen to this. If you want to get to a chord, the strongest leading chord is the dominant 7th chord built up a fifth from the target chord, okay? This B7 is a fifth, perfect fifth up from E, and it's a dominant 7 chord quality, okay? This is the strongest leading chord to an E minor 7. This is called a secondary dominant chord, okay? Don't worry too much about the theory, just know this concept, secondary dominant. That's why we use a B7, is it gets you to an E minor 7. So this B7 actually takes you out of the key of G, right? In the key of G, there's no D sharp, okay? We're adding this. This is actually momentarily pulls you outside of the key, but sets you up to play the 6th chord. Now in terms of rootless voicings and soloing, that can get kind of deep here, but rootless voicings, I like the B voicing. So the B voicing puts the 7th on the bottom, okay, F sharp minor 7. The B7, you got a B flat 7 flat 9, okay? So this is called an A voicing. You can learn your rootless voicings, all of you guys watching. We have a whole course on rootless voicings, okay? But really beautiful jazz chords. This is the 3rd, the 7th, the flat 9, and then the flat 13, okay? That's the ideal combination. You could also use the 5th on this chord as well. For soloing, you can use G major scale the whole time. I'm basically using the G major scale, but when on this B7 chord, I do adjust to the D sharp. right? That does sound better with the B7 chord. Make sense? Right? And then you can go outside the scale as well, but that's, again, a little bit out of the scope of this topic here. Great question. Lori, one more tips on speeding up. Yeah, gaining speed is a challenging thing to do at the piano. You know, I think one of the best exercises for gaining speed, there's kind of two, and they're standard exercises. They're not necessarily exercises that we've created at Piano with Johnny, but the first one is your scales, right? And actually, we do have scale courses here at Piano with Johnny. In fact, in our beginner level 1 learning track, you learn all of your scales for all of your keys. Is you want to develop speed, you know, just playing your scales up and down the piano, right? How fast can you play your scales with both hands? That will definitely help. The other thing is playing exercises like Hanon. Okay, Hanon, H-A-N-O-N, is a great book. This is a book that I used when I was studying piano, traditional piano lessons, and developing my speed. And I think these two, the scales and Hanon, are the best. You can also do arpeggios up and down the piano, right? Those can be very helpful. I don't use a lot of arpeggios when I'm playing jazz, so it's not something I personally will have my students do a lot of, but that's another great thing that you can do if you are wanting to practice gaining some speed, okay? The other thing is, what do you want to gain speed with? Do you want to gain speed with ragtime? Do you want to gain speed with blues? Do you want to gain speed with jazz and improv? Each one of these genres is going to have certain idiosyncrasies to it that you need to understand what you have to do in that particular genre. Like in ragtime, you know, you got this big jump in your left hand, you got these rag rolls in your right hand. That's a very unique technique, and so you want to master ragtime exercises to develop speed. So that's the other aspect of this question, is think about the genre that you want to develop speed in, and then go to the courses for that genre, and then go through the exercises. Most of our courses have exercises to develop speed within that genre. Okay. We also have some good exercises courses. I will recommend the two-hand coordination course. Is a very good course for developing coordination and speed with chord progressions. And then also our Endless Epic Chords exercises course. It's a really fun exercise course that uses this endless epic chord progression, and that can be very helpful. Welcome, Kathy, to your first Q&A. It's great to have you. Dina, the jazz and blues progression, very hard to solo over a walking left-hand bass line. Just playing left-hand chords sounds dull. Okay, advice of what to do with the left hand using jazzy blues chords. Okay, so you're working on the jazzy blues chord progression. The jazzy blues chord progression is used on tunes like Route 66. It's a super fun chord progression, and for me, when I'm playing jazzy blues, I do like to walk bass lines, but you can also do a shuffle, Dina, if you wanted to like do something with a little more groove. I assume right now you're just playing, you know, like just chords like this, which is fine. Let me give you a couple options. Here's the first, and this is probably the easiest, but it'll make it more interesting, is the 4 on the floor, okay? So you can take these chords and just do it like a little 4 on the floor. Basically, I'm playing quarter notes on each chord. That's super cool. It's not very hard to play. Again, I'm playing each chord 4 times. You can do a root chord pattern, or like, okay, it's a Charleston groove. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2. That's super cool. And what I'm doing here is you have to alter this. If you have one chord per measure, then you go 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. But if you have two chords per measure for this one, you have to go 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So you put your chord in early, that way you can accommodate two chords per measure. So again, those are some different ideas. The last idea, Deanna, you can do a shuffle, right? For me, I'm not a big fan of using the shuffle on the jazzy blues chord progression because the shuffle really kind of works on more simple chords. Once you start adding in chords like, you know, an A dominant 7, you get this sound, which I'm not crazy about on the shuffle. So I probably wouldn't use that, but do try the 4 on the floor and the Charleston groove. Joe Rizzo, could you go over playing a C major pentatonic scale over a C blues progression with recommended fingering? I'm interested in learning to play some of the lead vocal line melodies and mixing it with the minor blues scale. Great idea, Joe. So what Joe's talking about is he's saying, hey, can you take a C major pentatonic scale? These are the notes. This is called C pentatonic, C, D, E, G, and A. He wants to do this over a blues. Okay, again, we're going to use like a little blues shuffle, or you can just play some simple chords, but he's talking about fingering. You know, fingering is one of those things that as a jazz pianist, you change, right? Because when you're improvising, you know, you're changing direction at will, and so there's not really like a standard fingering that you should use all the time. But I get your question, you know, if you want to play a run down the piano, you want to probably have a standard fingering that's going to be the most efficient. So here's what I tell you to do is, you know, I think for me, for this scale, other teachers might have a different fingering, but the one I would probably use, I'd go 5, 3, 2, 1, and then I'd go 2, 1, 3, 2, 1, 2, 1, 3, 2, 1, 2, 1, okay? So I have to actually practice this, because this is not a scale I typically use. Up. Okay, you get the idea, okay? For me, the one I really like to use, I like to use the major blues scale, which has the addition of the E flat. This is actually the one I prefer if I'm playing a blues. That one actually fits a little better in your fingers because it's 3, 2, 1, 3, 2, 1, 3, 2. It's the same all the way down, okay? So that's what I would do. Try the major blues scale. I call it the gospel scale. We got a lot of courses and quick tips on this topic, so you can search more on that. Greetings from Munich. Finally made it to live chat. Great to have you, Michael. Good to see you, man. Working on the way you look tonight. The melody is written in whole notes and quarters. This is from Michael Adisa, one of our not new members, but just joined our community. Michael, it's great to see you here. Melodies written in whole notes and quarters. Would I play the jazz ballad stride in half notes, 1 stride per chord, or quarters, 2 strides per chord? This is the way that I like to play it. When I'm doing a jazz ballad, 1, 2. So when you say stride, I assume you're meaning 1, like that would be 1 stride. That would take 2 beats if I'm counting it 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? I want to make sure I'm answering this question the way you're asking it. Melody's written in whole notes and quarters. Ah, I see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. In this case, it would be 1, 2, 3, 4. Your stride pattern would take the whole measure. 1, 2, 3, 4. So it really depends on how you're counting it. But to me, 1, 2, 3, 4. This is how I would conduct it. I would not conduct it 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. So if it's written this way, it could be written. In fact, I would probably rewrite it if I could do it again. Again, being 1, 2, 3, 4. So this, again, this is the way I would do it. You could go. Again, if you're going to do it like this, 2 strides per chord, then you want to do it faster. Otherwise, it takes too long. So like if I wanted to do this as a stride tune, like a swinging, like more upbeat swing tune. In this case, I'm doing two strides per chord. One, or 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? That's 2 strides all on the C major chord. So it does depend on the genre that you're playing it in, but for ballads, I would do it once, and for upbeat swing, I would do it twice. Great question, Michael. Frank, as a beginner, is it possible to be doing too much at once? Absolutely. At any level, Frank, you could be doing too much at once. I did the best I could at St. Louis Blues, the blues scale, doing the intro courses. Wow. Now moving on to the Love Progression Challenge. As I mentioned, trying to get my two-hand coordination going. Should I be more focused? You know, this is probably the most common question I get from students here at Piano with Johnny is, what do I work on? You know, I want to be focused. And I'm a huge fan of getting really specific with what you want to learn at the piano and then focusing on that one item. Now, we have a lot of learning tracks here at Piano with Johnny. You can learn funk and blues and boogie and ragtime, but that doesn't mean that you need to do all of them, okay? What I would do, if for all of you guys who want to really be effective here at Piano with Johnny, is I would focus on one course from our Foundations learning track. This is going to be teaching you theory, technique, exercises, just that ground level foundational work. I'd pick one course from that, and then I would pick a corresponding course from one of our style learning tracks. So you might do blues, you might do jazz ballads, you might do swing, you might do Latin jazz, okay, but pick a style that you really want to learn and then work on that. Now, if you are a total beginner, Frank, then our style learning track is meant for level 2 and 3 pianists. If you're a complete beginner, we call you guys level 1 pianists. And if you're a level 1 pianist, then you really need to go through our level 1 learning track. And that's where we lay it all out for you, and you learn, how to read music, you learn your notes, you learn your rhythms, you learn your scales, you learn chords, right? That's the way I would do it, okay? For now, actually, we plan to have an assessment that assesses our students in the future and then basically tells you which courses you need to work on. So focus is really, really big. Here's what I would say to you and all of you guys who are pressed for time. If you don't have very much time to practice, like let's say you have like 15 minutes a day to practice, that's not very much, then I would just work on our challenge. We've got this weekly challenge. Usually it's a 10-minute video, 5 to 10-minute video, and that's very manageable. But if you can do the challenge in one course, that's great. If you can do 2 courses, that's even better. How would you structure a typical practice session, say 45 minutes? For me, I like to start with warm-ups. I like to start with exercises. So you can start with your scales. I mean, it really depends on how well what you want to focus on the most, but I would definitely do something that focuses on technique. You can go through one of our exercises courses, our 2-hand coordination course, our endless epic chords course, but do some exercise work. I would go through at least one course, either one of the foundations courses or one of the style courses, ideally both. And if you've got 45 minutes to practice, maybe spend 10 minutes on one course. Well, if you have 45 minutes to practice, I would spend 15 minutes on technique work. That's kind of a lot, maybe 10 minutes on just exercises, and then spend the rest of your lesson split between 2 courses. And if that feels like too much, you can also just do one course. Everybody learns at a different pace, so there's not really like a cookie cutter, this is what you should do and everyone should do. But generally, my recommendation to students is take whatever practice time you have, let's say you have an hour of practice time, and put about 20%, 15 to 20% into your fundamentals foundational work. So technique work, exercises, that kind of stuff. Once you have that down, take the rest of your time, the 80%, and I would divide it into 2 kind of primary things you want to learn. If it's improvisation, if it's learning a new song, if it's arranging a song, if it's, reading through lead sheets, but just focus on 2 things. And that should be the majority of your practice. Okay, so again, 20%, 40%, 40%. So that's kind of ideal. And for all of you guys, you really want to strive for at least 30 minutes a day of practice. I think the students who make the most progress at the piano, they set aside 1 hour every day to practice. And I understand that's not feasible for a lot of students, but really try to get a half hour in. I think everyone watching, every member at Piano with Johnny can fit in a half hour into their day of piano practice if you're serious about it. All right. Good. I liked your article on playing a jazz gig and the progression you gave. F major 7, Right. Would you suggest a 50-50 ratio of playing songs versus soloing over a progression? What is the ideal ratio where the audience does not get bored, but you can still fill up the time? That's a great question, Dina. Here's what I would say, and it really comes down, the answer ultimately comes down to what you want to do, but I think to keep the audience engaged, you want to have a mix of both. I think most audiences, if you're playing a gig and you're providing background music, they're going to want to hear some tunes, but it is totally fine to just fill with chord progressions. Here's what I would advise you. You can do a 50-50, so you play a song, then you do some improv over a chord progression, and then you play a song. I think most people probably want to hear more songs than they want to hear just chords and improv. So again, this is not a right or wrong thing. I would say for you, maybe do 2 songs and then improvise over a chord progression. And then do 2 songs and then improvise over a chord progression. Again, it's not wrong if you want to do 1 song and a chord progression. And guess what? It's not wrong if you just want to play chord progressions all night and improvise over those. Okay? All right. Very cool. Ideal ratio, yeah, we answered that. What kind of recommendations would you make for playing in a church for the first time? Praise and worship, voicings on the keyboard with guitar-led songs, offertory, prelude. Wow, playing on a church instrument. I'm curious what you're playing. Are you playing a piano? Are you playing a keyboard? Are you playing an organ? The way you play each of these will be different. I played actually for my church for many years, Harvest Christian Fellowship. Greg Laurie, if any of you guys have heard of Greg Laurie, I played on the worship team, and so I'm very familiar with this. But you have to play the instrument differently depending on what you're playing. For example, I played a B3 organ. You're going to play that very differently. So if you're playing a keyboard or an organ, essentially you're functioning as a pad where you're providing sort of like a bass for the music. You're basically creating an ambiance. And so for these types of chords, 5th chords work really well, Jeanette. So like if I'm playing a typical praise and worship tune, let's pick something really simple like C major, A minor, F major, and G. If you're playing a pad, then go for this open 5th sound, okay? And again, this is really, really nice. This works on a keyboard or an organ, like that. Again, we're playing the same thing in the right hand, nice open 5ths. That is super nice. And then this is super nice, okay? This is very effective. And Jeanette, I will recommend a course to you because there's a really good course that I talk about praise and worship sort of progressions and how to approach them as a keyboardist. It's called the One Chord Wonder Course. And in this course, we talk about this amazing chord. Okay, in the right hand, it's basically 3 notes, but you can use this on any chord from the key of C, and this is used a lot in contemporary praise and worship music. So Jeanette, check that course out. It's called the One Chord Wonder Course. But you really want like sus2 chords. Like if I see a C major chord in a praise and worship setting, I'm going to take that 3rd, I'm going to make it a 2, like that. It's called a C sus2, okay? And this is called a G sus4, okay? This is called an F sus2. We really like sus2 chords in praise and worship music. Another really good course, Jeanette, we have a really excellent course called Pop Accompaniment. Pop Accompaniment, I believe is the name of the course. And in this course, we talk a lot about different patterns that you can use whenever you're accompanying, which is essentially what you're doing as a pianist. If you're playing piano, you're doing something more driving, I would check out that course. It's a really, really good course that talks about all the different rhythms that you can use. Hiram, welcome to the live Q&A. Great to see you, man. And all of you guys just tuning in. Sue Hayball, so many familiar faces. Great to see all of you guys. Noticed guests at Disneyland asking to get on the piano over the refreshment corner. Is that appropriate? Or do the staff musicians hate that? It's a great question, Bill. And by the way, Bill, I'm really enjoying your playing. I think this is the same Bill. I think you've been posting a lot in the community. It's not inappropriate. So what they told us, so I worked at Disneyland for 9 years, and I had many guests come up and tell me they played piano and ask me to play the piano. And Disney did not have a policy against it. In fact, they wanted us to interact with guests. They really wanted us to create those sort of magical moments. So, kind of it felt like almost anything could go back then when I played there, but it depends on the pianist. Some of the Coke Corner guys don't want anyone else to play their piano, and so they won't let anyone else play. That was not my approach. I wanted people to play. In fact, I would recruit people. I would say, hey, anybody in the audience play the piano? And a few people would raise their hand. I would get up off the stage, and I would walk up to them and say, come up, it's your chance to play Mickey Mouse's piano. So, it's, I don't know if they have kept that policy, but that was one of my favorite things to do. In fact, Johnny Hodges, I mentioned him earlier, he was my teacher. He played at Disneyland for 25 years. Before I got the gig as the Disneyland pianist, my mom would drive me to Disneyland. I was 15 years old, and I had been studying with him for a couple of years. She would drive me there, and we'd sit in the audience, and when he'd play a set, he would stand up, and he'd say, anybody play the piano? And I'd raise my hand, and he'd bring me up to play. And so this was part of my experience becoming a professional pianist, getting comfortable playing in front of people, is I would go to Disneyland probably a couple times every month and play at the refreshment corner piano, and he'd invite me up. So it's something that I wanted to pass on to other people, and I actually did this for my students when I played there. Cool question. Been quite amazed by the diminished scale. Oh yeah, we love the diminished scale. This is probably one of the most universal scales for me as a jazz pianist. Anytime I see a dominant 7 chord and I want to play a really blazing line on it, I play diminished scale. Okay, it's an amazing scale. What else can you tell us about its uses and the chords it encompasses? Oh, Jonathan, this is a great question. There's 3 diminished scales. Okay, a diminished scale is a whole step, half step scale. And we talk a lot about this throughout our courses. I'm trying to think if there's a good course on this called Scales for Improv. Okay, Scales for Improv on 7th chords. That's where you'll find these scales. But it's a whole step, half step scale. That's the C diminished scale: C, D, E flat, F, F sharp, G sharp, A, B, and C. Okay. There's the second one is a B diminished scale. It's a whole step, half step scale. And then C sharp is the other one I like to play. It's a whole step, half step scale. Now, why are there only 3? Well, if I start on B and I play my diminished scale, okay, and I just played C and I played C sharp, well, if I do it on D and I do a whole step, half step scale, it's the same scale as a B diminished. Okay, so there's only 3 diminished scales. Oh, diminished scales are so cool. I could go on and on about them. Okay, here we go. A diminished scale is basically the notes of is whole step, half step scale. It's used on dominant 7th chords. So it's used on like a G. The B diminished scale works on a G7 chord, and it hits the 3rd, the sharp 11, the 5th, the 13, the 7, the root, and the flat 9. So it hits some very cool colors of this scale. Okay. This B diminished also works on a B flat dominant 7 chord. Okay, it hits the flat 9, the sharp 11. The flat 9, sharp 9, the 3rd, the sharp 11, the 5th, the 13, the 7, and then the root. Okay, it also works on a D flat dominant 7 chord. So you can play this B diminished scale on a D flat dominant 7 chord. It hits the 7, the root, the flat 9, the sharp 9, the 3rd, the sharp 11, the 5th, and the 13. Okay, it also works on an E7 chord. Okay, and it hits the 5th, the 13, the 7, the 1, the flat 9, the sharp 9, the 3rd, the sharp 11, and the 5th. Okay, so I just told you a ton of information, and you might be going, what the heck, and why does this one scale work over these 4 dominant 7th chords? And the reason why is because on a diminished chord, it contains these 2 tritones, B and F, and a D and an A flat. A tritone is a flat 5th interval, and these tritones are the essential notes of a dominant 7 chord. Meaning on a G7, the tritone, the 3rd and the 7th define the chord. Okay, they make a G7 a G7 as opposed to like a G major 7. Okay, well, this 3rd and 7th is also the 3rd and 7th of a D flat dominant 7 chord. Okay, so it works on a G7 and it works on a D7, this B diminished scale. The B diminished chord also contains another set of tritones, a D and an A flat. Okay? Well, guess what? This is the 3rd and 7th of a B flat dominant 7th chord, and it's also the 3rd and 7th of a E 7th chord. Okay? And so this is why a B diminished scale works over these 4 chords. It works over a G7, it works over a B flat 7, it works over a D flat 7, and it works over an E7. Okay? That was a huge crash course of theory. If it went over most of your heads, it's fine. Don't worry about it, okay? These concepts will start to make more sense in our courses, but diminished scales are amazing scales. I could go on and on. I literally could sit here for an hour talking about all the uses of them. But I do want to get to some of the other questions. I'm very tempted to go on, but I do want to make sure the other students get their questions answered. Will you consider making a course on the Barry-Harris diminished scale? That's so funny. I was just about to mention the Barry-Harris scale. Yeah, the Barry-Harris scale, we could make a course on this. It's basically a way of harmonizing a C scale using block chords. It's basically a combination of C chords and then B diminished chords. So this was one of the other ways I could have answered your question, who asked this, Jonathan. But basically, you know, you take a C, a B diminished, a C6, a B diminished, a C6, a B diminished, a C6, a B diminished, and a C6, okay? So this is a really cool way to harmonize a melody. Like, if I wanted to harmonize Somewhere Over the Rainbow, basically, you know, you can use these chords. That's probably not a great melody. Like, probably another melody that works better is like Smile. You guys know that song? Okay. Okay, that would be a really great use of that concept, but we definitely could make a course. Again, Dina, if you have any course, and all of you guys who have course recommendations or workshop requests, you can make these requests on our shows page by going down to our student engagement portal, clicking student workshops, and then you can make any request you like, and we document all of the requests, and we look at the top requested ones, and those are the courses that we make. Could you give us some suggestions on playing Blue Bayou and F, especially some comping suggestions? James, I think you've asked this question in a previous Q&A. I feel like I've seen this question before. Blue Bayou, let's see. I'm going to go to my monitor here. Yeah, I've definitely answered this question, James, in previous Q&As, but I'll answer it again here.
I feel so bad, I got a worried mind. I'm so lonesome all the time, since I left my baby behind on Blue Bayou.
So, if you did this in F, this is a very simple accompaniment, James. Basically, left hand's going F, C, C, F. It's like root 5th, 5th, root 5th. Right hand, you can use like a normal F major chord like this. You could also make it more colorful, like this. Put the E on the bottom, that's called the major 7th. That's really nice. And basically I'm just sort of filling the right hand 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. That's really nice, okay? But the left hand is really the driver behind this groove. Make sure that's super solid. And then even more colorful left hand would be to put the 9 in on an F major 7 chord like this. You could also put the 6 in, 7, super nice. Okay, and basically this is going to drive the whole song, okay? I think in one of the last Q&As I did mention like okay, I call this an island groove. It reminds me of like island sort of music, but you know, 7 chord, 6 chord, basically what I'm doing there. Okay. Good question, guys. We've been going about an hour and 10 minutes, so I probably will get to some of the other the pre-submitted questions here in a minute, but I want to make sure you guys are doing good. Love the last stride course after you've gone to the tense, one of my favorite styles of playing. Do you think you'll be doing more courses in that style in the near future? Yes, Adam, definitely. And as we see more of our members wanting certain types of courses, we will definitely be making more in whatever style. So yes, it's a style I really enjoy playing, so yes. I loved your courses, jazz ballad soloing over the turnaround progression, but I'm curious how to construct scales over different chords. I know to use C sharp diminished over A7, good, but what if I want to play A minor 7 instead, or on chords in a tune besides the turnaround? Yeah, Simeon, check out our scales for improv on 7th chords, and then we also have one for beginner intermediate players called Scales for Improv on Major and Minor Chords, but that course is the course if you need to know which scale to use on a certain chord. For example, on a minor 7 chord, I think we talk about 5 different scales that you can use, okay? But let me give you a quick answer and say, you know, if you got an A minor 7 chord, one of the best scales to use on a minor 7 chord is called your Dorian scale. It's a minor scale with a raised 6, and then the 7, and then the root. Okay, so I would check that course out. That really will give you a solid foundation for any chord type. Okay, what do I have to do to eat and play just like you did? I could tell you what I eat every day, if you guys are curious. I don't know. Well, I drink a lot of smoothies. I make a big 32-ounce. I have a Vitamix blender, and I make a 32-ounce smoothie with, this is really good, spinach, bananas, cherries, dark sweet cherries, oh my gosh, they're so good, and blueberries. That's it. You fill it to the top, and I drink that for breakfast and lunch every single day. I'm a total creature of habit. But I drink that for breakfast and lunch, and then for dinner, I do a kale salad, which is amazing. I chop up kale and I put heirloom tomatoes in it, broccoli, garbanzo beans, and I make my own dressing. I make vinaigrette dressing. So I try to eat healthy, and I get a ton of energy. And in all seriousness, you know, if you guys want to have longevity at the piano, you want to have energy in life, you got to take care of your body, okay? And so a huge aspect of what I do here, and being able to play and be able to come here in the studio and have energy and make courses is what I eat. So if you guys struggle with your diet, most people do, you know, this is something to really think about and how this relates to your piano playing. Seriously, if you want to have energy and creativity and clarity in your thoughts, you got to take care of your body. So anyway, for what that's worth, I'm not a dietitian, so don't take it as any. Yeah, I'm not a doctor. Very good. Can't find the place on your site where you post course suggestions. Dina, it's on the shows page. If you go to the top, if you're on mobile, there's 3 little lines at the top right. You click those lines, go to shows, and scroll down. You'll see student engagement. Can you explain how you count down a perfect fifth like that? It's not 5 notes, and I don't understand. Luke, a perfect fifth is like C to G. Okay, it's, you know, if you want to count whole steps and half steps, it's 1, 2, 3 whole steps and a half step. That's a perfect fifth interval. Okay, so Luke, if you don't know your intervals, this is really important. In fact, this is a topic we don't have a course on yet. Well, we do talk about this in our intro course, but intervals are very important. You need to know what this is a second interval, this is a third interval, this is a fourth, a fifth, a sixth, and a seventh. Okay, you got to know these intervals and how they relate. And I would just start with C, okay? This is a minor second. This is a minor third. Okay, this is a augmented fourth or a diminished fifth. It's the same term. This is an augmented fifth or a minor sixth. Okay, and then this is a minor seventh. Okay, so you know, the way, in terms of what I was explaining earlier, Luke, the cycle of fifths progression, the fifths are not all perfect fifths because we want to stay in the key, okay? So if I'm doing a cycle of fifths in the key of C, you know, A is a fifth, 1, 2, 3. If you know your C scale, it's all white notes, okay? Well, A is a fifth down from, you know, literally count your notes of the C scale, right? C is all white notes. So if you take A, you count down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it's a D. And you count down 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it's G. And you count 5, 5, okay? So that's the idea of the cycle fifths progression, is we're staying usually in a tonal center or a key. Therefore, the fifth won't always be a perfect fifth interval. Hopefully that answers your question. Very good. Hey, there's even a Jazz Hannon. Has anyone tried that? I've heard of Jazz Hannon. I've never tried it. Gunnar, thank you so much for the courses. You are the best. Are there some in-depth info for sustain pedal? Okay, Gunnar, we have a course. I made the lesson sheet music. We just have not filmed it, but it is a full course on pedaling and how to pedal. They're pedaling exercises. So just please be patient for that. We will knock that out very soon. Blues Penta scale on demo. Blues Penta, I'm not sure what you mean. Blues Penta? I think you're talking about the major blues scale. A C, D, E, flat, E, G, and A. It's like a C blues scale with the addition of the flat third. Okay. Yeah, Dina, is it normal to get a piece 80% correct almost immediately, but it takes me forever to get the last 20%? Yeah, usually there's a section of the song that's really, really hard, okay? And so this takes the majority of the work. Make sure you're playing pieces at your level, but I would say if you get 80% quickly and the 20% takes you a long time, that's actually pretty good. What you don't want is to tackle a piece where it takes you forever to get, you know, the majority of it. You want to have something that is challenging for you, but not too challenging that it takes you, you know, a crazy long time. When did you leave Disney? 2014. What is the South song Johnny Hodges played in the interview? What is the South song? I don't know what you mean by this question. The name of it is called South. I don't know anything about the song. I don't know who wrote the song. Actually, the only reason I know of the song is because of Johnny. So I could ask him. In fact, Johnny is actually, for those of you guys curious, Johnny Hodges is in our community. He's in our Facebook community. So if you are curious to reach out to Johnny, you can tag him in your posts. And he's actually been pretty involved in our Facebook community. So feel free to ask Johnny directly. Still having problems with the 10 interval patterns in the left hand, both the static, which is normally too much of a stretch for my hand size, and the fast arpeggios, which I find hard to play smoothly, like the beginning of Cascade. The 10 interval patterns in the left hand. I'm not sure 10 interval pattern, I'm not sure what you're referring to, but if you are struggling to play fast arpeggios, the 10th interval patterns, I think you're talking about something like this. I think Cascade has something like this in the left hand. I'd have to pull the sheet music out, but basically, you know what? I see a few questions on this. I will pull up Cascade sheet music and see what you're talking about. Cascade, for those of you guys curious, is one of our songs that you can learn here in the PWJ membership. It's an original song, and we have Soundslice, sorry, not Soundslice, the Smart Sheet Music that you can learn it. But let me just pull this sheet music out for you guys. Here it is. Bear with me here. And I think you're talking about you're talking about these rolled tenths, I think, in the left hand. Is that right? Does that sound right? So yeah, you know what you can do? Okay, I'm just sort of sight reading this. I wrote this a long time ago. But basically, you know what I would do is I think you're struggling with sounds to me like the left hand, like rolling this. What I would do is honestly take the 10th out. I would just do it like that, root, fifth, and root. How do you say your name? Kajeto? I'm not sure how to say your name. But just get rid of the 10th. If you can't roll it like that, you can do this on all your chords, like on the F. I don't think there's an F chord. Actually, there is an F minor. Get rid of the A flat and just make it an F. It'll still sound really, really nice. All right, you guys, I do want to move on to the pre-submitted questions. Again, if you can not attend one of these Q&As, you can always pre-submit your question and it will get answered. So, and by the way, these lessons are archived at pianowithjohnny.com. Go to our shows page and you can see any of our previous live events. So our live Q&As, our live workshops, anything that we stream here, you can always watch at any time. I want to answer this question. Allegra says, I'm working my way through the 10 lesson blues challenge. My question is, why does the left-hand chord progression end on a 5 chord? It feels like the progression doesn't get resolved and still wants to go somewhere else. That said, I'm thoroughly enjoying this challenge. It's my first one. It's taken me a lot longer to get through, but I'm having a lot of fun. Okay, I'm glad you're having fun, Allegra. And, you know, here's what I would say is, the reason this blues progression ends on a G7 is because the progression, you want to repeat it. Normally when you play a blues, you don't play one time through and end the song. You play the melody one time through the blues form, and then you might play the melody a second time. That is if you have a melody. In this course, this is an improv course, so there's no melody. Okay, you're just improvising. But the reason there's a G7 at the end of the blues form is because this is a transitional chord, okay? The blues starts on a C7 chord, C, E, G, and B flat. Well, what if I want to repeat the blues form? What's a good chord that I can add at the end of the blues form to get me back to my C7 chord? And I mentioned this earlier in today's live Q&A, is the best chord to get you to a chord is built up a fifth from the target chord, so C, D, E, F, G, and then you make it a dominant 7 chord. A dominant 7 chord is a major triad with a lowered 7, okay? That's a G, this is a G dominant 7 chord. If you don't know your dominant 7th chords, we've got a ton of courses on dominant 7th chords in our level 2 foundations learning track. You can learn your 7th chords and exercises. But this chord is the strongest leading chord to a C7. So when you're playing tunes, you will very commonly see at the end of the song, if the song is meant to repeat itself, you'll see a chord that's a fifth up from the chord from the first chord of the song, because you need to get back to that first chord, okay? So in this case, this tune starts on a C, so we got a G7 at the end. Okay, so once again, the simple answer is this chord is meant to repeat the song, and the song is meant to be repeated. If you wanted to end the song, don't put a G7 there, just keep it as a C7, right? Right? I never went to a G7 chord there. I just kind of stayed on my C7 at the end. Cool. Sarah Hung, where to join the show? Do you have the link to email me? I think Sarah was referring to our last show, but the way to access our shows is you go to pianowithjohnny.com. You'll see the red banner at the top of the screen, and you can also go directly to the live shows page, which we usually email to you guys before the live show. And then again, another issue with the show is we did have an issue, George, with the show time for our last show. It was slightly off, so that should have been fixed with this show time. If it's not, we will make sure to have that fixed. Nicholas, can you explain song structure in terms of chorus, verse, hook, and bridge? Sure. So a chorus is typically the main section of the song. It's the section that everyone knows or everyone will sing. It's the main part. It's not one of the setups. So a lot of popular music, you'll have a verse, right? And then it builds, and then boom, we're in the chorus. This is the part most people will sing. The verse is, like I just said, it sets up the chorus. Usually the form of a song will be verse, verse. So 2 verses and then a chorus. And then you'll have maybe verse, verse, chorus, okay? There's all kinds of different variations on this, but again, verse and chorus are like the 2 main aspects of a song usually. The hook is usually referring to a melody, so the hook is that melody that everyone knows, or it could be a chord progression that makes the song very popular, but the hook is kind of a not specific term. It sort of refers to whatever makes that song unique. The bridge is usually after the second chorus, so usually a song goes verse, verse, chorus, verse, verse, chorus, bridge, okay? And then after the bridge, usually in popular music, then it'll just end with a chorus. So that bridge usually occurs after the verse and chorus have been presented, and usually it usually pulls back a little bit, and then the final chorus, usually it goes full volume. So those are good terms. I wouldn't worry too much about it. In jazz, we like to refer to A, B, and C. So typically in jazz, A is your verse, B is your chorus, and then C is your bridge. Okay? Good question. I do want to turn it to our Q&A submissions. And actually, those were part of our submissions, and here are the rest here. So we're going to start from the bottom. I'm going to take a quick drink of water. Do you think it's a good idea to play dominant seventh runs down and up the keyboard with 2 or 3 fingers like Art Tatum did? Theodore, you know, I'm not sure how Art Tatum, how the fingering that he used for his runs. Actually, I don't use 2 fingers or 3 fingers for most of my runs. I use 4 fingers. Like on a C7 run, a C7 stride run, you know, I'm playing, you know, 4 fingers, okay? You know, a G7 run, again, I'm using 4 fingers, so that's my recommendation, is why not use more fingers so you're not fatiguing those 3 fingers. There are some cases where I would use 3 fingers, like on an E flat run, if I'm doing a major run. You know, something like this where I'm doing like an E flat 6/9 chord. Well, again, yeah, this is mostly starts with finger 4, but I go 3, 2, 1, 3, 1, 3, 2, 1, 3, 1, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so that is I guess a run that I would use 3 fingers on. But to me, generally with runs, my general recommendation is use 4 fingers. Again, because you've got 5 fingers to use on your hand, and you might as well use more of the fingers, spread out the workload. I would consider myself an intermediate pianist, but I don't know all of the 12 scales, my 12 scales inside and out. Should I master the beginner courses before going to intermediate or start working on the intermediate content? And the answer is yes. Okay, if you want to play jazz, you want to play most of the styles we teach here at Piano with Johnny, you want to improvise, you must know your major scales, because when you're playing chord progressions, you know, chords come from scales. Every chord you see in music, minor 7 chords and dominant 7th chords and major 7 chords, are a function of the scale, okay, of an A scale. So you got to know your A scale for these chords. And you know, in jazz music, you're going to see every chord. You're going to see D flat chords, and you're going to see E chords, and you're going to see A flat chords. And so you need to know the underlying scale, which is the major scale. So yeah, for all of you guys, if you don't know your major scales and you're working on intermediate level content, then go back and learn your scales. We have courses for all of our scales. Johnny, working on Maple Leaf Rag, I can't figure out the notes of the chords for what I think is the 3rd section. I'm not sure what part you're talking about, but I would just look at the sheet music. It's kind of a big section, but that's the way I play it. And this is the hardest part. That big B flat dominant 7 walking up, okay? Anyway, it's probably too much to try to teach you right now, but watch the video I just played. I'm not sure what part you're struggling with. You might want to, Darren, consider sending a video in for our student assessment. You can submit a video and I can give you feedback. That is on our shows page. Ubda Banu, if I'm an intermediate player and I have an hour to practice every day, 7 days a week, how should I split up my practice time to optimize practice? How much time should I spend watching courses versus just playing on my own? You know, it really comes down to your goals here, but I would say, you know, you want to have some time when you're playing just to play for fun, and then you want to have other time that you're working on courses and you're actually practicing. So I would say there's not a right or wrong here, but maybe spend 15 minutes just playing for fun. That's very important as a pianist, is that you're not always working on material, but you're actually playing songs you enjoy and you're improvising. So maybe 15 minutes and then spend the other 45 minutes on courses. But if you really want to focus just on the freedom of playing, you could play 30 minutes and then work on courses for 30 minutes. What I wouldn't do is have any sort of extremes. I wouldn't play for fun for 5 minutes and then work on courses for 55 minutes. And I also wouldn't work on courses for 5 minutes and then play for fun. So you want to have a balance. Is there a course for vocal accompaniment? I searched the keywords singer and vocal, but nothing came up. Danny, we don't have any courses where I'm singing per se, or like that's the focus, but we have a ton of accompaniment courses where I'm teaching you how to accompany a singer. If you're singing or if someone else is singing, or if you're perhaps playing with a saxophone player, maybe they're playing the melody, but the point being, someone else is playing the melody, you're not playing the melody, you're playing an accompaniment. That's what I would search, Danny. If you want really good courses for how to accompany a singer, type the word accompaniment, and you'll find a ton of really great courses. For example, for pop accompaniment, we have a really good course that teaches you a ton of different patterns you can use on chords if you're accompanying a singer. But again, there's so many. We've got a really great bossa nova accompaniment course. We've got just tons. We've got jazz accompaniment. So I would search that word. Danny also asks, I was trying out the C blues scale from the 10 Lesson Blues Challenge on this progression. He lists C, C, E7, A7, D minor, G in the key of C, but it doesn't sound right on an E7 and an A7 chord because the chords are not in the key of C. What should I do in this situation? Good question, Danny. So the chord is an E7 and an A7, and you're right, these are not in the key of C, okay? So C blues scale might sound good on, the other chords, but doesn't sound right. You're totally right, okay? So here's what I would say. Anytime you're playing a chord that is not in your key, an E7 is not in the key of C, what you want to use is one of the scales that I teach in our Scales for Improv course. And I'll just tell you the best one to use across the board. If you're playing a dominant 7 chord and it's not in your key, then I would use what's called your Mixolydian scale, E Mixolydian. It's like an E major scale, E major scale, but it has a flat 7 in it. Okay? And same thing with A. On A dominant 7, play A Mixolydian. It's an A scale. It's like an A major scale with a flat 7. Okay? And these scales will work better. So now when I get to these chords, and I'm not sure what style you're playing in or how fast these chords go by, but again, on E7, that's your scale. A7. I'm adding some passing notes, but for the most part, I'm using this A Mixolydian scale. Which order of courses would you recommend for someone interested in learning jazz and blues? Would you recommend taking the blues intermediate and then blues advanced before moving on to jazz? Or would you take the blues intermediate, jazz intermediate before moving on to advanced level for both courses? Edward, I think either way is a good way. You could just do blues intermediate advanced and then do jazz intermediate advanced. Here's the deal. The blues intermediate advanced delves a lot more into technical challenges as opposed to theoretical challenge, like heavy theory, because blues is blues. There's not really a lot of theory unless you start mixing it with jazz. So I would say once you understand the concepts of blues and you can comfortably solo on it, you're probably fine to move on to jazz before doing both levels of blues. However, if you want to really master the technical aspects of blues, then I would just focus on blues before you move on to jazz. So once again, if you're thinking about the theory, like the understanding aspect, you don't need to do the blues intermediate advanced before you start the jazz. But if you want to focus on the technical side, then yes, you will learn a lot more technically challenging things in the intermediate advanced course learning track. Luke, hi Johnny. I was wondering, when doing improv, I'm currently learning blues. How much of the improv should be true? I've never played this this before improv, and how much of it is memorized licks, lines, smash licks, etc. I'm finding that memorizing lines isn't that bad, but when I start actually improvising, I lose the left hand and get lost. Those are kind of two things, losing the left hand and getting lost versus your other point, which is how much of improv is, you know, stuff you already know versus stuff you're actually making up. And I'll be honest with all of you guys, when I'm improvising blues and I'm improvising jazz, I'm recycling. I mean, 98% of what I play is stuff I've already played, okay? What makes it actual improvisation is not that I've necessarily never played that lick or I've never played that scale or that line, it's how I connect the lines. So every time I improvise, you know, if I take 5 licks, I might connect them in a different way every single time, right? And if you have 5 licks that you can, you know, you can connect them, I think, with 25 different combinations, right? And so this is really where I think an improviser, where you all want to be as improvisers. You want to have certain licks and riffs you've memorized that you can sprinkle into your playing, but the key, I think, to being a good improviser is just sort of mixing them in different ways every time you play. So again, for me, when I sit and I improvise, there's tons of stuff that I've already played. And so I definitely am a big fan of memorizing a lot of these licks and riffs. Finding memorizing lines isn't that bad. If you lose your left hand and you get lost, then you need to simplify your solo. Nobody wants to listen to an amazing soloist if you don't know the chords you're playing, right? The chords are the foundation. So if you're losing your chords, simplify your solo and start with simple eighth notes. Okay? And don't play anything so hard in your right hand that you lose track of the chords in your left hand, okay? Really, really important. You can even go simpler. You can play chord notes. Okay. Marcus, hi Johnny, do you have any tips or ideas to accompany a church song, Christmas hymn? Let's see if we can pull this video up really quick. And boy, this Q&A is going kind of long today. But I want to make sure you guys get your questions answered. So usually we try to do these around an hour, and they usually end up oftentimes going longer. So in this style, this sort of a church accompaniment style, it's a lot of block chords, okay? So let me go back to your question here. Tips or ideas to accompany a church song, Christian hymns. You know, when I'm playing a song like this, in most hymnals, you see all the chords written out, you know. Something like that, right? You can read the notes. That's probably the best approach because oftentimes there's very specific chords that they want you to play. But for me personally, I like to read lead sheets. I'm a big fan of knowing what chord they want, and then I choose how to play the chord, or I choose how to voice the chord. So, you know, if you're more of a beginner player, if you're not totally sure what to do, read the hymn, but if you can figure out the chords, then you can take these chords and you can play your own inversions, right? And I might do it that way. If you're more of a jazz pianist, you want to approach it from that realm. What I would not do is try to come up with some totally different groove, because these tunes like this follow a very specific, a lot of chords moving. Sometimes you have a different chord on every beat. In fact, that's very common. Or you'll have 2 chords, you know, something like that, where you have, you know, every beat might have 2 chords. And so in that case, you don't have a lot of flexibility. You kind of just have to play the chords as written. So unfortunately, I don't think I can give you a great answer. Usually hymnal playing is they want you to play it kind of this certain way. Carolyn Brown, do you have any recommendations for order of learning skills to play? I'm going to make this a little, let's go back to this so it's a little bit bigger. Do you have any recommendation for order of learning skills to play in jazz or cocktail style for someone at an intermediate level with fair understanding of theory, but still not under the fingers yet. There's so much information. It's hard not to keep myself focused on something long enough to master it. I feel like I'm right on the edge of getting it, but can't focus. If you want to play jazz in the cocktail style, definitely, who asked this, Carolyn, you want to go through our Level 2 Foundations learning track. In this learning track, you learn all of your jazz theory, but specifically we do exercises, okay? So you have to know your 7th chords. If you want to play jazz piano, any style of jazz, you have to know your major 7, your dominant 7, and your minor 7 chords. And we have courses on these. We have what are called theory and application courses, where you learn all these chords and how to apply them to songs. And then we have another course called exercises, where all we do are exercises on each of these chord types. So that's going to be the step. I would really follow, Carolyn, our Level 2 Foundations learning track. That will teach you all the harmony that you really need to know to understand the concepts that we present in our style learning tracks. Okay? So go through that. You can also submit a video, Carolyn, if you have very specific, you want specific feedback on your playing, you can submit a video to our student assessment. Julian, can you explain the difference between arpeggio and a broken chord? Also the difference in the finger pattern to play and practice these. So they're kind of the same thing. An arpeggiated chord, you know, that's a C arpeggio up and down the piano. A broken chord is the same thing, okay? But typically, if someone says play this chord broken, usually when I think of a broken chord, I think of it being just in one position like this. Whereas if someone says arpeggiate a C chord, I might think of playing it in multiple octaves like that, okay? So technically they're the same thing, but a broken chord usually is, you know, if you're accompanying, that would be a broken chord. But if someone said, hey, play a C arpeggio, you know, I might do something like that, okay? Difference in finger pattern to practice and play these. Yeah, I mean, you got to know your arpeggio fingering. You know, C major would be 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. For broken chords, you can just use your pinky. That's fine, okay? This is from Joe. How would you elaborate and provide an in-depth explanation of what we are looking at when we see double chords in the chord listings above the grand staff? An example would be, okay, these are called slash chords, Joe. A G over B literally means it's a G in the right hand, that's the chord, so it's a G major chord, and the B is not a chord, it's a note. It's a bass note, okay? So any lead sheet that says this, the letter on the left is the right hand chord. I know that's confusing, that the left letter is the right hand, but that's just the way it works. So it's a C major or a G major chord, and then the bass note is a B. Okay? E minor over G, that's an E minor in the right hand over G. G is the bass note. G is not a G chord. It's not a G major. It's just a G bass note. Okay, does that make sense? C over E, C major chord in the right hand, E bass note in the left hand. Vale, please prepare the course, St. Louis Blues Boogie. Thank you, Vale. I've been starting to do these little daily videos that we're sharing in the community, and I shared one called St. Louis Blues in a boogie woogie style. You can find these on our socials, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Piano with Johnny. Which PWJ course explains in detail the circle of fifths? You refer to the circle regularly, but I haven't found a description of it in your theory courses so far. If you haven't delved into it, I'm sure many of us students can benefit from a deep dive. Thanks, Rob. It looks like you're very close to us here in California. You know what, Rob? We don't have a course specifically on the circle of fifths. However, we do talk about it in our intro to the keyboard course. You can actually see the whole circle of fifths. And it's something we talk about a lot. So definitely we could consider making a course specifically on the circle. Again, I would recommend submitting this as a workshop or a course request on our shows page. I hate to sound like a broken record, but it would be possible to do a lesson that teaches us a specific solo in a specific song. All right, so I think I've seen this question, James. Yeah, thank you for your kind words. You're such a wonderful, patient, and inspiring teacher. Yeah, you know what, James? In terms of basically walking you through one of my solos, we've got a number of courses where I teach you how to solo. but we don't have any courses where it's like a fully notated solo that I teach you like the solo. So James, I would put in a request. Just go to our shows page and go down to workshop request. And you can make this request and we will archive it in our future courses and workshops that we make, okay? And I appreciate your words. Yeah, and this is a valuable skill. This is something I did with my college jazz teachers. Actually, a bunch of my teachers is we would look at Oscar Peterson solos. We'd look at, you know, jazz pianist solos and horn solos, and we would analyze them. Charlie Parker, and we'd say, what is he doing? You know, how does he construct this line? Eric Bork, I don't know if this is the right place. The Way You Look at Me, Cocktail Piano 2. I've worked up the full arrangement as written in the course, also working on soloing, but could you guide me as to when I might begin and end a soloing pass within the context of your beautiful arrangement, which seems written in such a way that's not obvious. It's not obvious when and how you might integrate a solo and go in and out of it. The solo, Eric, the real key is when you get to the end of the form, you're going to solo after you do your turnaround. So after you play the song, da 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 dum, I think you have an A7 chord, A minor 7, D minor 7, and a G7. Here's where you start your solo. Okay, so that's where you're going to start. Again, it's a C6, or I think it's an A minor 7. It might be an A dominant 7, but this will take you right into the start of the solo. In terms of how to end the solo, the way I like to do it is I will solo over the A section, and then basically I will solo up to where the B section starts, okay? So I'm soloing over the A section, C, imagine this is the second time, A, I go to my A minor 7, and then what I would do is I just fill here on the F minor 7 chord. Okay, and then we come back in with the melody. Okay, so once again, to end the solo, I would play it with the normal chords of the A section, except I would end it before you get to this F minor 7 chord, and then I would just basically fill the chords. You could do a little melody like that to get you into the B section. Chris White, can you show us the fingering that you used for the run at the start of the intro for St. Louis Blues? Let's see if I can pull this up really quick. Okay, so St. Louis Blues, you said at 4 seconds. Let's see if we can get this up here on the screen. Okay, this is I think you're referring to this. That one. What I'm doing, Chris, I'm basically hitting a G minor 6, okay? And it's basically like a G minor like this with a 6th, an E added. And I'm sort of just playing a G minor up the piano. Like that, right? But what I'm doing is I'm tossing a little E in there randomly, okay? So it's not really timed. I'm just randomly. You see what's happening here? Okay, I'll go even slower. Okay, and that's basically what I'm doing. I'm just doing it really fast. Okay, I hope that helps you, Chris. And let me know in the Facebook community. I look forward to seeing you post this. New to PWJ. Been participating in this month's jazz collaboration. I understand most everything, but I'm very slow at learning things. I've only had a beginner course. I understand there is a new challenge each month. Would it be better to stick with the January jazz collaboration until I learn it thoroughly, or start leave it and start on the next month's collaboration or practice both at the same time. I don't want to get bored, and I tend to to quit if I get bored. So, this is one of those, Betty, this is one of those things that you have to balance. You don't want to quit because you're getting bored, but you also want to be playing things that you can actually play. In other words, you want to get through the material. You don't want to get 50% through and then move on and then never have learned it. So here's what I would say, Betty, is you don't want to quit. Okay, so if that's what's going to happen, if you don't move on, then move on and work on something else. But at the same time, I would try to finish some of this material. So one recommendation is you can simplify a lot of the topics in our monthly challenges. You can take out, for example, some of the harmony notes. You can oftentimes take out some of the fills. So I would encourage you to do this, but I would encourage you to try to finish what you're working on there. Maybe look at the amount of time that you're putting in and ask yourself, is there more time you could be putting in to practice this stuff? But yeah, you don't want to quit, right? You want to continue moving along. So I would say my immediate response would be, hey, do move on if that means you're going to quit. But if you're not going to quit, then I would stick with the material and try to actually learn it. That way you can play it for your friends and you can enjoy it. Hi Johnny, this is Martin. Really enjoying PWJ. I'm wondering if you could share some thoughts on how to go about memorizing scales, chords, and pieces. This seems to be one of the biggest challenges for me. I generally have a good memory, but this is still very difficult. Tips on memorizing scales, chords, and pieces. The thing is, these things all go hand in hand. Scales, chords, and songs all relate generally to a key, meaning most songs are written in a key, and then therefore they use chords and melody notes from that major scale, okay? So what I would have you do, Martin, is go through our key courses here at Piano with Johnny. They're in our level 1 learning track. And in these courses, you learn the scale, you learn the chords, you learn chord progressions, and you learn a song for that key, okay? So this is, in my opinion, the best way to learn songs, to learn chords, and to learn scales is to put them all together, okay? And this way you can see how they all connect with one another. So Martin, definitely go through our level 1 foundations learning track. Final question from David. I'm familiar with using sheet music for songs, but can you talk about learning to play new songs by ear? This is a challenge, Dave, to figure out songs by ear. Playing songs by ear is all about hearing what is being played and then being able to identify it, okay? So the big thing, this really comes down to several things. One is, can you pick out a melody, right? Can you sing the notes of a major scale? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 1, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And can you sing different intervals? Could you sing 1, 3, 1, 4, 1, 5, 1, 6, 1, 7? Can you sing all those intervals? That's step number 1. Before you get into any harmony, make sure you can sing various intervals. Can you hear a melody and can you write the numbers? If you listen to a pop melody, could you hear it and go, okay, that's a 1, then it went to the 3, and then it went to the 2, and then it went to the 5, and then it went to the 3, and then it went to the 7, and then it went to the 2, and then the 1, okay? You have to hear music in terms of these numbers. You got to be able to identify what you're hearing. Once you can do that, then you can start looking, and once you can identify intervals, then you can start looking at harmonies, okay? And what you want to do is you want to start being able to identify the sound of a third, and the sound of a second, and the sound of a fourth, and the sound of a fifth. Okay, and you want to be able to identify this, okay? That's a 6th interval, that's a 4th interval, that's a 3rd, that's a 2nd, okay? Once you're able to do this, then you can add a 3rd note, okay? And the way to do this is to learn your diatonic chords, okay? And what I would do is learn each chord up the C scale, because these are the chords that are typically used in songs, if you have a song in the key of C, and try singing them, okay? 1, 3, 5, 2, 4, 6, 3, 5, 7, 4, 6, 1, okay? And try doing it without a piano. And this will really, really start to help you because now you're starting to hear chords, and not only hear chords, but you know which chord it is. For example, if I hear progression and it goes, okay, well, that's a 1 chord, that's a 3 chord, okay? And I know this is a 3 chord because I hear the root going up a 3rd, that 3rd interval, and then I hear the chord quality, it's a minor chord. Anyway, it's a very deep topic. We've had this course, we've had many requests for ear training courses, so this is something we plan to make in the future. But definitely follow this sort of logic I presented here. It will help you quite a bit. All right, you guys, this has been a very long Q&A. We will end it here. If you're still here, say hello. This has definitely been a long one. We went an hour and 54 minutes for today's Q&A, but it's always fun for me to hang out with you guys, answer your questions, and this is the best part of PWJ for me, is getting to interact with you guys, getting to help you reach that higher level of playing. So keep posting your videos in the community. I want to encourage you guys to participate in all of our live events. This month we have some very exciting stuff happening. We've got our live workshop lessons coming up, I believe next week. We also have our monthly collaboration, or actually our challenge. This month's challenge is our Love Progression Challenge. You can find that on your dashboard. We also have the collaboration. Okay, and the collaboration is basically taking what you learned in our Love Progression Challenge and then performing it, playing it with me and the other members in the community. So the way to find the collaboration is to go to pianowithjohnny.com, you go to your dashboard, and then you can see the collaboration in our forum. You go to our forum and you can scroll down to that. All right, so guys, thank you all for hanging out on this beautiful Wednesday morning. We're working on a ton of new courses for you guys. Keep up the hard work. Hey, I know piano is one of the hardest things to do. Many students don't do it simply because it's just so much work and it takes so much time. So I applaud each one of you for your effort to put the time in to actually learning this instrument. You won't get it in a day and you won't get it in a week, but I promise you, if you do it every day for a few months, okay, you're going to start to see big progress when you look back and you go, wow, in 3 months, I've made a ton of progress. And if you're recording videos of yourself and you're putting them in our Facebook community, you can go back and watch a video of you 3 months ago and you'll go, wow, I made a ton of progress in just 3 months. I want you guys to remember something. We tend to overestimate what we can accomplish in a week, and we tend to underestimate what we can accomplish in a year, okay? And I want you to hold that. Piano is a long-term journey, and it's something that you need to pace yourself with. So if you're feeling discouraged, just say, hey, it's okay. This is going to take me a while. What you guys see me doing is, I don't know, 20,000 hours of playing or something. It's probably some stupid high number, okay? So don't get discouraged. All right, guys, have a beautiful Wednesday. It's been a ton of fun, and I will see all of you guys on our Facebook member community. All right, see you guys.